Hello to all Cenimaster lovers. Hope you enjoy watching. Let's get started. The movie begins with a police officer named Nick and his colleague Roy chasing a terrifying creature in the street. The creature is carrying a metal bag and trying to escape. Suddenly, a car hits Nick. To find out what happens to Nick, we flash back 4 days earlier. We see Nick at night digging a hole in his backyard, hiding a cloth bag containing a gold piece. He then covers the hole and plants an orange tree over it to conceal the location. The next morning, Julia wakes her husband up, happy about the tree he planted in the garden. Nick assumes she is upset about their financial situation and tells her she must wish for a new car and lots of money to live comfortably. However, she reassures him that money isn't everything and that she is content and happy with their life together. Relieved that Julia doesn't care about money, Nick decides to report the gold he and his colleague Bobby found. When he goes to work, he tells Bobby that he buried the gold and wants to hand it over to the police. He assures Bobby that he is free to keep his share and that he won't report Bobby's share. Bobby tries to convince Nick that they found the gold by chance while searching for weapons and drugs, so no one knew about it and they have the right to keep it. Nick contemplates his need for money but insists on his decision to hand over his share to the police. Bobby reluctantly agrees to surrender his share as well. Nick believes him. While they are talking, another colleague informs them that the dangerous criminal they were searching for has been located. They prepare and head out with a large police force to arrest him. On the way, Bobby tells Nick about his bracelet, which he always wears and considers lucky, as it was a gift from his grandmother. They arrive at the location and raid the warehouse where the criminal is hiding. A shootout ensues between the police and the gang. Nick goes upstairs to chase the wanted man, but the man escapes through a window. Nick is then confronted by Bobby, who decides to kill him to keep the gold a secret. Bobby pushes Nick from a height, killing him. Nick finds himself in a frozen moment where everything around him stops moving. He leaves the warehouse and feels himself being pulled upward into the sky, surrounded by others who have also died. He then finds himself in a completely white place, which turns out to be the headquarters of the Rest in Peace Department, RIPD. There, he meets a supervisor who informs him that he has died. Instead of being judged and sent to hell for his corruption and theft of the gold, he is given a special mission. The supervisor explains that he was brought there because they need skilled police officers like him to help capture deados, the dead who have escaped from hell and returned to Earth. Nick is given the choice to either go to hell or accept the mission. He agrees to join the RIPD. The supervisor tells him his mission will last 100 years and he will return to Earth in a different form, not as he was before. She stamps his chest to mark him as part of the RIPD and gives him a special gun capable of destroying deados, as earthly weapons are ineffective against them. The bullets must hit the head to ensure the deados are eliminated. The supervisor then takes Nick on a tour of the RIPD facilities, showing him the cells where they keep captured deados. She explains that deados appear as normal humans but transform into monstrous creatures. She also informs him that deados who escape and return to Earth cause decay and rot, affecting the world with their presence, contributing to global warming and spreading diseases. Without the RIPD, the world would be overrun by deados. Nick is introduced to Roy, another RIPD officer who will be his partner in capturing deados. Roy takes Nick to a secret location that leads to a portal disguised as an old video rental store. This store serves as a gateway to Earth, chosen because it's unlikely to attract attention. They attend Nick's funeral, where Nick is deeply affected upon seeing his own burial. He tries to speak to his wife Julia, but she doesn't recognize him and walks away. Nick confronts Bobby, but Bobby also doesn't recognize him. The police intervene to stop the altercation. Bobby leaves with Julia in a car, leaving Nick confused about why they don't recognize him. Roy explains to Nick that he now has a different appearance, though his soul remains the same. Roy shows Nick his new identity card, revealing that Nick now looks like an old Chinese man, while Roy appears as a beautiful woman. Everyone, including deados, will see them in their new forms. Roy warns Nick that the universe won't allow their true appearances to be revealed. They then get into Roy's car to begin their mission. During the ride, Roy tells Nick about his past as an old Western lawman who was killed while chasing a gang. They head to a building where one of the deados is believed to be hiding. Based on Roy's information, they buy heavily spiced Indian food. As spices reveal deados, they enter the building, noticing decay around one of the apartments. They knock on the door, which is opened by a deado in human form, pretending to be health inspectors. He lets them in, and they sit with him, and they start asking him if he is a dido or not, and at the same time he starts eating Indian food, but because of his spices, food makes didos turn into a monster, so he tries to handcuff him. He takes a carton of milk from his fridge and then jumps out of the window to escape. Immediately, Roy pushes Nick out of the window so they jump too and catch didos. Of course, nothing happens to them when they fall to the ground because they are dead anyway. And the dido ate the carton of milk that he took from his fridge, and we discover that inside it were gold pieces similar to the gold pieces Nick and Bobby found them before, because when they hit him, this gold piece falls from his mouth. But Roy shoot him in the head with his gun and kill him. After that, they come back again with the gold pieces to the headquarters of RIPD to give them to the evidence department and issue them. Where is he suspicious about this gold thing and he does not understand why? The didos gather and ask the Vision to take one piece of the confiscated gold, and Roy's informant asks him about it, and they actually go to the informant. The man acts as if he doesn't understand. Rick leaves it to him and tells him if he knows anything to report him immediately. By this, they leave bait for the deado to contact Bobby. The deado calls Bobby, who meets him and takes the gold piece. Nick and Roy watch from their car as Bobby drives to Nick's house. Bobby enters and asks Julia if Nick hid anything in the house, as he had mentioned something something before his death. Julia recalls the orange tree Nick planted in the garden and shows it to Bobby. Bobby removes the tree and finds a buried cloth sack underneath it. At that moment, she says she must get rid of it, especially since she feels betrayed by her husband's honesty. Bobby, of course, pretends to be chivalrous and takes the gold with him, claiming he will hand it over to the police. Bobby then opens the trunk of his car, takes out a metal suitcase, and places the gold pieces inside it. Afterward, he drives off. Naturally, Nick and Roy follow him in their car and find him stopping in front of a building. Bobby takes the metal suitcase from his car and enters the building. Nick and Roy follow him inside and see Bobby handing the metal suitcase to a heavyset man before leaving. They decide to follow the heavyset man, suspecting he is one of the deados. They enter a room in the building, and Nick takes out spice containers from his pocket to threaten the man into revealing who he is delivering the gold to. However, the heavyset man sniffs all the spices through his nose, revealing his true identity as a deado. He transforms and escapes, leading them on a chase. The deado manages to evade them on the street and climbs a tall building. Roy shoots a grappling arrow at the deado to pull him down and capture him, but the deado still escapes. A street accident occurs because of the deado. With a car flying and falling on Nick, the deado escapes into another building, running through the offices and pulling Roy along. He jumps onto an elevator, and Nick follows him into the building and activates the elevator to go up. The elevator rises quickly, nearly breaking through the roof of the building. However, the deado manages to escape but leaves behind the metal suitcase. Nick retrieves it and secures it. Meanwhile, the street is in chaos, with cars destroyed due to the battle. The police and media arrive at the scene. The head of the Rest in Peace Department, RIPD, reprimands Nick and Roy for letting the deado escape and causing such destruction, exposing them to the media. However, she informs them that the gold pieces they found are extremely dangerous because they are intended to create a golden obelisk. This obelisk would reverse the direction of the tunnel connecting the sky and the earth, causing the dead to descend back to earth instead of ascending to the sky. This would allow them to escape judgment and take control of the world. She also reveals that the obelisk was destroyed around 3,000 years ago, scattering the golden pieces across the world. However, the deados manage to collect all the pieces and only need human blood to activate the golden obelisk. She shocks them further by announcing that they have been suspended from duty due to the chaos they caused, and 2 other officers will replace them. They have only 1 day left before they are erased entirely. Feeling desperate, Nick visits Julia at the field where she trains and talks to her again, touching her face. For a moment, she senses that he is Nick, but she leaves, seeing only an old Chinese man before her. Nick decides to complete the mission, even with only 1 day left. Roy reveals that Bobby had been his colleague for 5 years and never showed any signs of decay, despite being a deado. Roy speculates that Bobby must be using something to mask the smell of decay. Nick concludes that Bobby's bracelet, which he always wears and claims is a gift from his grandmother, must be preventing the decay smell. To confirm this, they decide to visit Bobby's house. Meanwhile, Julia calls Bobby and tells him about the Chinese man she met again, feeling as if he were her husband, Nick. Bobby becomes suspicious and tells her to leave the house immediately and stay in a safe place. He promises to send people to escort her. Julia agrees. Nick and Roy arrive at Bobby's house and, at gunpoint, force him to remove the bracelet. Once he does, the smell of decay spreads everywhere, and the house begins to crack and crumble. However, Bobby has not yet fully transformed into a deado because he hasn't sniffed any spices. They search for the hidden gold in the house, find it, and confiscate it, arresting Bobby and taking him to the RIPD. There, he is placed alongside other deados previously captured by Nick and Roy. While searching Bobby, Roy finds half of an empty sphere and takes it along with the gold, handing it over to the evidence department. The officer places the half sphere next to another half found with another deado. When the 2 halves merge, they emit strong waves that freeze everyone in place except the deados. The deados attack the officers, retrieve all the confiscated gold, and rush to build the golden obelisk. Bobby leads the deados to the location where they can escape to Earth. Roy manages to adjust his gun slightly and shoots the empty sphere, destroying it. The freezing effect on the officers is lifted. The deados escape to Earth through a video store and climb a very tall building to assemble the golden obelisk on top. A massive battle ensues between the deados and the RIPD officers. Bobby sends 2 deados disguised as humans to Julia, claiming Bobby sent them to escort her as agreed. Julia goes with them. Meanwhile, a powerful tornado forms above the building where the golden obelisk is being assembled, destroying nearby buildings and cars. The deados wreak havoc everywhere. Julia arrives at Bobby's location, where he immediately sniffs spices, transforming into a large deado monster. He kidnaps Julia and takes her to the top of the building where the obelisk is being assembled. He plans to kill her and use her blood to activate the obelisk. Bobby stabs Julia, causing her blood to flow and activate the obelisk. The tunnel between the sky and the earth begins to reverse, bringing the dead down to earth in massive numbers. Nick and Roy fight them off. Nick confronts Bobby in hand-to-hand combat after running out of bullets. Meanwhile, Roy uses a car caught in the tornado and drives it into the golden obelisk, destroying it. The dead are sent back to the sky. Before she dies this time, she sees his real form there because she is between life and death, but he asks her to continue her life because he has already died. Julia wakes up to find herself inside a room in a hospital after they saved her from death, and after they carried out their mission at the end of the day, the surveillance rewards Nick and tells him that he only received a warning and will not be punished. But she tells Roy that they have given him 53 more years to chase after dodos, so he gets very upset. After that, the man tells Najim that he won as a friend and gives him new identity papers instead of the old Chinese man, and he tells him that he brought him. He makes a good deal of money so he can change his identity. Nick is happy, but when he looks at the new identity papers, he finds himself a little girl with glasses. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to get more new videos.